Welcome to another BGS video. My name is Justin, and in this video we'll be taking a quick look at the airborne RMM, the risk management model. The archaic definition of risk management is the identification, analysis and elimination and/or mitigation to an acceptable or tolerable level of those risks, as well as the subsequent risks that threaten the viability of an organization. The airborne risk assessment model or management model works in very much the same way, except that we are now identifying, analyzing and eliminating risks associated with our flight, should there be an unforeseen emergency or abnormal situation. The RMM that we're going to be looking at is a generic one. Your company will have their own, but the principle will still be the same. Looking at the RMM in the slide, should an unforeseen situation arise, the first thing we do, which is the most important, we keep the aircraft flying. So we aviate. We then navigate as we need somewhere to go. We can't just pick a random direction. There may be high ground on the departure path. These hazards would normally be covered in your departure briefing. We then communicate with ATC. You'll make either a mayday or a pan call. You will tell them what your problem is and what your intentions are. Once you've completed the relevant checklists and have spoken to ATC, and if time permits, we can look at the RMM. We will assess, action, manage the problem, make our decision and implement that decision. Let's look at each section individually. Using a twin-engine turboprop aircraft as an example, let's imagine you have accelerated past V1. You start to rotate and you get a master warning light flashing. You check your annunciator panel and you have a low fuel and oil pressure on the left engine, and then the generator goes offline and you start to feel the yaw. In a turboprop, it's going to be very obvious that you've had an engine failure, as well as which engine has failed by the amount of rudder you're going to need to counteract that yaw. You then continue with your engine failure actions as per your SOP, and once you've completed the checklist, you can now speak to ATC. You inform them of your problem and request to return to the field, as that was the original plan in your departure briefing in the event of an engine failure after V1. Looking at the assessment section, we analyze. In this case, we've experienced an engine failure, so it's fairly obvious what the issue is. What caused the issue will not be so obvious. All you can really do is check that everything is where it should be, like the condition lever didn't end up in the fuel cutoff position and the firewall fuel valve is open. We can then try to diagnose the problem. Again, we know we've had a flame out. If everything is where it's supposed to be, it'd be difficult to diagnose what caused it unless there is visible damage to the engine. We then identify the procedure to rectify or contain the problem. Once we've done that, we then need to action that procedure to rectify or contain the problem. By this point, we would have completed the memory recall items, as well as the emergency, normal and abnormal checklists, so the procedures will be complete. But it's good practice to follow the format of the RMM and run through the procedures again to ensure that they have all been actioned. Under certain circumstances, you could try an engine restart. However, in our example, we're close to the airfield. The aircraft is flying just fine on one engine, so we're going to consider the problem as contained. Now we need to manage the problem until we can get our aircraft safely on the ground. We need to look at operational needs, such as weather at the departure airfield, if an approach is required, fuel imbalances, maximum landing weights, etc. In this example, our point of departure is our home base. So we have maintenance facilities as well as handling agents to take care of our passengers on landing. Most importantly, we need to make sure that the crew is coping with the situation. These are just a few considerations that need to be taken into account in order to make a decision. And to make sure that there are no flaws in our decision making, we keep monitoring and assessing and make changes when necessary until we are safely on the ground and parked in our bay. Until next time, fly safe.